A lot of that, the experience on their side of the table was involved with Russia. And one of your commodities trading firm, Southco, was heavily involved with Russia, and you said that you've been involved with Russia on a variety of different fronts, including your specialty and your doctorate. So I was wondering if you could talk about kind of the importance of Russia in today's economy and the focus on Russia that the Southern Center has had since you've been affiliated.
Well, we've always had an intense interest in Russia. Obviously, in the time of the Soviet Union, it was because the Soviet Union was our principal adversary in the world. But we felt that our role, and the one that I did with Peter White and other companies in this city, was to facilitate communication, even in the heart of the Cold War, that some kind of conversation, whether it was about business or just an exchange of ideas about the two systems, was very important, and we had good relationships with the U.S. and Canada Institute there. Dr. Georgia Arbatov visited here on several occasions. This was back in the early 80s. We kept a close communication, at least to exchange ideas and try to understand what the differences were, but also if there were points of communication and a common interest. And I believe it's still true today. Whatever the relationship is, Russia is so important to the world and to the United States that a good dialogue needs to go on.
Characterize that importance. What sectors would you say that the U.S. really needs to be concerned about?
Well, from a pure business point of view, one of the biggest things that we have is their oil. We are buying quite a bit of Russian oil, so just as a supplier of one of our important commodities, it's important to be engaged. And of course, all of our allies in Europe are receiving the lion's share of their energy from Russia, or at least a significant portion depending on the country. And this is very, very important that we keep that dialogue going, because if it's important to European business, it's also important to us. I think that Russian business also, we must realize they are interested in investing in the United States. The largest steel company in Russia is invested in 3 or 4 places, including investments in the Southeast. They are looking to expand globally. So they're going to be a player beyond politics, which they're obviously a player. We can tell that by the daily news that we're engaged in one way or another with them. But they're also an extremely important economic player. And if they're that, then we have to be in close communication with them.
And that has had some implications for Atlanta in the past. The Southern Center actually has hosted Neville Isdell, who kind of spearheaded Koch's expansion into Russia in the early 90s, I think it was. And also recently, the Russian Chamber of Commerce in Atlanta has established a memorandum of understanding with the Russian Chamber in Moscow. So it's definitely not just a bilateral issue on the national level, but also going down to just the city. In your opinion, and Mr. Isdell touched on this in his address that the Southern Center hosted, but in your opinion, how has doing business in Russia changed since you first started interacting with the country?
Well, it was a long time ago, and of course it was very difficult, but it was also in some ways easier because if you were selling chickens or peanuts or anything, any commodity or any service, you dealt with a specific one agency who was responsible for buying that worldwide for the Soviet Union. In that way, it was simpler and more straightforward. You either had a deal they wanted or not. It was complicated, of course, because of the political tension at the time. Over time, and since 1991, but especially since around 2000, 2001, the climate has increased and become more positive in some ways for investment. In fact, foreign investment has gone up tremendously in Russia until recently. Every time you have some political tension, then all companies will have to call into question what they're going to do and how they're going to continue to position for investment in Russia, and I suppose vice versa. But business in Russia today is, of course, more market-oriented, but there's still great challenges in terms of rule of law, how the contracts are played out, what do you have to do to get business in Russia? It's a big challenge. It's still 11 time zones. They have a lot of climate issues and a variety of things that complicate the business environment for a lot of investors. But I can tell you things like the financial services, accounting, law, all kinds of services, to say nothing of the oil and gas industry and the strategic metals industry. There are all kinds of opportunities there. I cannot say what's going to happen with this current situation. Anything can happen. We hope that we can reconstruct a climate of positive economic relations and that's set in the political relationship. And I trust that that our administration, the current one, and whoever the new president will be, will look to see how we can continue that development. Russia's just too important as an international player for us not to be engaged.
Well, describe the relationship between the kind of on-the-ground economic relations between, say, the Russian chamber and here in the Russian chamber there. How does that interplay or interface with the political negotiations? Do you think that the political unrest, or not unrest, but tension at the highest levels trickles down and affects those really personal relationships?
Well, it can, of course, probably not at the personal level, depending on the industry. If it's very strategically sensitive, then of course they intervene, like in oil and gas. The Russian government is very much in control of those enterprises. I think that overall it's about the communication. Through ups and downs, there have been business communication, including through associations like the Chamber of Commerce, where those conversations continue. It also has to do with programs that can be presented on both sides. We've certainly cooperated with programs like this where, again, information is shared, dialogue occurs, even debate, and we consider that a good thing.
So some of the business stuff could kind of be a salve for the wounds that are occurring at the highest level.
Well, we have to remember that at the height of the Cold War, we were doing millions and millions and millions of dollars of business with the Soviet Union in agribusiness, in agricultural grain, meat, and other commodities. International trade goes on in one way or another. You may have to do some creative things, or perhaps there's a third party involved somewhere where you sell somewhere in the world and they sell it. But commodities and economic relations are going to happen almost irrespective of the political environment. It's better, of course, if you have a cordial environment, because then you can move forward and address the real true business issues that are between the parties. Now, the Chamber of Commerce here is obviously looking for opportunities for investment as well as commercial relations, looking for companies who want to sell something in Russia, and I'm sure that's why they're here. The other role that the Chamber of Commerce on both sides can play is to work informally with government officials, indirectly representing business interest, and represent them as a trade association so that a large company does not have to go to the Russian government on its own, but rather go under the umbrella and under the banner of the Chamber of Commerce. This is a very important role.